I don't know whether there's popcorn, but...
Hi, I'm Eugene from Economics at TuitionGenius, and you can see that we are clearly on a cruise ship. Now, this is the Genting World Dream, and we are on a cruise ship to nowhere. Now, in addition to teaching economic concepts, we are going to be filming the entire journey like a travel vlog. Right behind me, I have little Edison To, my eldest boy. Right, so say hi, Edison. Why you say hi to yourself? Just say hi. We all know that the COVID-19 pandemic has had some devastating impacts on the economy. Okay, the economy has been contracting. Singapore's GDP is expected to be down compared to previous years, and it's going to be significantly down. Okay, what is going to be the most badly hit will be the tourism industry. And so this is one exciting opportunity for us to cover one of the economic concepts that we learn in microeconomics, and that is what we call the shutdown condition. Now, we cover shutdown condition under production and cost as well as market structure, and usually we want to visit and we want to understand when would firms make a decision to shut down in the short run and when would firms make a decision to shut down in the long run. This is actually extremely interesting because cruise industry is obviously significantly affected. Cruises worldwide have actually been stopped for I think a good 6 months, and now in Singapore's case, we are resuming these cruises to nowhere. Now, in the long run, a firm will make a decision to shut down when their average revenue cannot even cover their average cost, or when their total revenue is not able to cover their total cost. Now, that's actually very straightforward. In the long run, if you're not actually able to make at least normal profits, you should shut down. That makes actually perfect sense, because in the long run, you don't make profits, then why are you in business anyway? Right, but in the short run, there is actually a very interesting concept. So in the short run, as long as your average revenue covers at least your average variable cost, we are happy to keep on running. We're happy to actually maintain operations. And this seems like what Genting World Dream is doing. At 50% capacity, we in my opinion, at 50% capacity, the Genting World Dream is not going to turn a profit. But it is at least able to cover its average variable cost. That has to be the consideration for them to continue operations. Now, we want to understand on this trip, why is it that in the short run, the condition to maintain operation instead of shutting down is when your average revenue is greater than the average variable cost. So let's find out. So at this point, we are going to do a ship tour, and as we go on a ship tour, we're going to identify what are your variable costs and what are your fixed costs on the ship. You know, this ship actually costs $960 million, which is close to $1 billion. So the building of this ship, alright, these are obviously fixed costs, and they do not vary with your amount of output. So this has really been money that's already been spent. So this would definitely be classified as the fixed cost, the building of this entire ship. Okay, so we're going to take a look at the facilities available in this ship to see, how these $960 million have been spent and why are they fixed costs. So we were talking about fixed costs just now, and all of this equipment that you see here, right, these obviously are fixed costs that do not change even with the amount of output level. So do you remember we were talking about how $960 million have been invested in this? So $960 million have been invested into producing these facilities. And that would mean that actually these are things that have already been spent on, and we classify them as fixed costs. Actually, more specifically, these are sunk costs. So you cannot recover these. No matter what you do, you can't actually recover what has been spent on these costs. So these are what we call sunk costs. Let's go, Edison. Hello. the kind of variable cost that we can talk about will be the raw materials used to prepare the food. So you have a look at the table, what's on the table. So this are what we call variable costs, meaning to say that when you have more passengers, you use more of these raw materials. If you have less passengers, you use less of these raw materials. So they vary with the output level. When you have more people, you use more. If you have less people, you use less. So that's why they are variable in nature. Now, part-time staff, in terms of if they are paid for, let's say, on a day-to-day basis or on an hourly rated basis, you will hire more of these part-time staff if there were more people, and you will hire less of these part-time staff like waiters if there were less people. So this can also be classified as under variable costs. So again, this would be an example of a variable cost, right? If I'm not mistaken, right outside the hot pot, there's supposed to be an ice cream place that would have been open. So, but if your occupancy and your capacity is actually low, now basically, which means in econs terms, your output is low, you can actually cut back on the provision of such facilities. So simply put, if there aren't enough passengers, right, to utilize these facilities, you can actually shut down some of these facilities. So you need less raw materials, meaning to say the ingredients, for example, producing the ice cream, for example, or you can also require less part-timers to work at these stations. So across the entire boardwalk area, you can take a look. The entire place feels closed. There are not any bars that are open at this time of the day, even though it's in the afternoon. Right? You would have expected that some of these places should be open, but they are not. Which means to say that these are what we call variable costs. You can shut off these components at any point in time and keep your costs low. Right? Whereas fixed costs, on the other hand, no matter your output level, you can't change it at all in any way. Let's go. Right, what show is this?
Let it go.
Can you sing?
No, I don't know. You have a lot of money.
No, I don't have a lot of money. I have a little bit money. Right, the ship is now moving, and we'll be reaching Marina Bay Cruise Center, which is where we started from, very soon. So I thought it's quite timely now to do a conclusion to this entire video and to this entire trip. Now, there are two things I want to conclude on. First, let's start first with the economics portion. Now, why is it that in the long run, the shutdown condition is where your average revenue must cover your average cost? Right, that is actually, of course, a sensible thing, because in the long run, you assume that firms want to make normal profits minimally. So in the long run, if a firm doesn't make even normal profits, it's just not sensible to keep the firm operating. So in the long run, firms will want to make, at the very least, normal profits to continue remaining in operations. And if you know for a fact that the firm in the long run cannot make normal profits, it's just not sensible to keep the firm operating. So in the long run, okay, the shutdown condition is as long as I cannot even cover my average cost, my average revenue cannot cover my average cost, I want to shut down. If my total revenue cannot cover my total cost, I want to shut down. So meaning to say, in the long run, for a firm to continue operating, the average revenue must at least cover the average cost. The total revenue must at least cover the total cost. That is in the long run. Alright? Now let's go on to the short run, which is actually the focus of the discussion on this entire trip. Now, why is it that in the short run, we only need to cover the average variable cost? Meaning to say that the shutdown condition is that, okay, if we cannot cover our average variable cost, we shut down. But if we can cover the average variable cost, we maintain operations. Now, when we were referring to this World Dream, this cruise, okay, when we walk around, point being that the ship was very empty, and I just can't figure any way that the firm Genting here is making any profits, okay, of the cruise itself. Now, so then the question being, now if they cannot make any profit off the cruise itself, why did they continue operating? Okay, this is the question. Fundamentally, if you can't make money out of operating this cruise, why do you even choose to operate this cruise? Now, remember we talked about how they have already spent $960 million on this cruise,
on building this cruise ship, right? That is fixed cost and that cannot be changed. They have really invested a lot of capital expenditure on building new ships, and they probably still have new ships that they are continuing to build, right? And the ship captain, right? This money that you actually invest in training people. These are fixed costs that actually you can't recover these fixed costs. These firms, right, when deciding whether to shut down or not, or to continue operating, they will only consider one thing. Can I cover my average variable costs? Means to say that, okay, can I cover the money to hire all of this ship crew? Can I cover the raw materials? If the answer is yes, I can cover these raw material costs, I can cover this average variable costs, I will want to continue operating. Because why? If I continue operating and I cover this average variable cost, I may still be able to cover a little bit of my average fixed cost. If I can cover a little bit of my average fixed cost, right, that is something that is of a bonus, because by right, fixed costs are money that you have to part with or has already parted with, regardless of your output level. So if you do not operate at all, you lose all of those fixed costs. If you operate, then at some level, once you've covered your average variable cost, and if you are able to cover a little bit beyond your average variable cost, you are still able to cover some of your fixed costs. So that's kind of a bonus, right? Of course, this is the theoretical discussion to why firms will want to carry on operating, right? If they are not able to cover their average cost, but they're able to cover their average variable costs. Okay, that's one. Two, is the cruise industry likely to continue making more than normal profits, in fact super normal profits in the long run? I would definitely think so. The cruise industry probably operate within an oligopolistic market structure, with the key players being Royal Caribbean Cruise. In Asia, Genting is actually not that big a player, it has only a few major ships. And you have firms like Disney Cruises. These are all big players, and they likely have some form of supernormal profits that they can continue to make use of to continue operating. So they have had quite a tremendous amount of retained supernormal profits, so they should be able to last through this pandemic. And after this pandemic, when the staff travelers start to actually travel again, they will probably make supernormal profits one day again. Now, so that's it for the economics portion of this video. Let's go on to the fun portion of this video, which is how was this trip really, and was it an enjoyable one? Now, first thing first, of course, let's go on to talk about the additional COVID-19 restrictions. There were some inconveniences. Number one, of course, you had to take the COVID-19 test. Number two, you have to maintain safe distancing. And number three, a lot of the things that you want to do on board, you have to make some bookings. Now, those would be what I'll call the not so fun part of the trip compared to a regular cruise. But let's go on to the great part. Number one, most of the activities that are usually available, they are still available, and it's been pretty much quite a fun trip for me, my son Edison, and my colleague Jing Yong. I think it's been pretty fun for us. And number two, because of this 40%, 50% capacity, because of the 50% maximum capacity and the number of people being on board was probably about 40+%, that led to the trip being tremendously enjoyable, because there were really not that many people. To every restaurant that we went, right, you don't see actually the restaurant being packed to the brim. It's like there's really quite a bit of distance between everyone, and so it made the trip really tremendously enjoyable. There was very little waiting time. And if you're afraid of like the COVID-19 swab test, the swab test was actually quite okay. It was, I think, a few tours around each nostril, and the waiting time wasn't that long for us at the very least. We felt that the waiting time was okay. It was about 15 to 20 minutes to wait to take the COVID-19 test, and once we took the test, it was about another 30 minutes for the results. So I think this was all quite fine and bearable. And if you ask us, will we recommend the trip? I'll say that we will definitely recommend the trip. So it's been fun, there's been a lot of food, there's been a lot of things that we can do on board, and I will definitely recommend a cruise to nowhere. Okay, right, so that's it for this lesson video. Okay, I will catch you all on the next video. Bye bye.